Hello, Quest. This is Jonathan coming to you for the Issachar Project, week 3, March 2nd. And the Issachar Project comes in a bigger picture, part of Quest, out of what we're calling Quest Academy. And Quest Academy is about short-term, easily accessible, and dynamic learning environments that richly invest in your understanding of foundational elements of the Bible and a biblical worldview that are applicable to real life in the 21st century. And so we're trying to say we want to connect the dots with the Bible, with our lives and our world and how we understand it all. And so we're calling it the Issachar Project, which comes from 1 Chronicles chapter 12, which speaks about the tribe of Issachar and that there were men who understood their times and they knew what Israel ought to do. Because they had a picture of God and understanding of the world, they knew how they should live their lives. And so we want to be like that. That's why we're calling it the Issachar Project. And one other kind of initial idea we've said each week, we've said that we want to build a philosophical and theological framework for dealing with the cultural conflicts around us and in us. We want to build a framework for how we think, not just what to think and what to believe, but how we get there and what kind of is going on internally. And so this week, we're going to unpack a primary idea on what we're calling the biblical worldview. Biblical worldview. And a worldview is essentially this. This is kind of a base definition. A worldview is an all-encompassing, coherent way of thinking about life, about fundamental beliefs and assumptions about the universe. So worldviews, we all have them, with which how we understand and look at the world, and it's all encompassing, and in theory, they would be coherent. However, you and me as human beings have some broken pieces, some misunderstandings, and so our worldviews actually aren't totally coherent. But we're saying the Bible has a worldview, and it is coherent and good, and we want to understand what that is. Not just any worldview, but what the Bible has to say about a worldview and how we look at the world. So worldviews, it's kind of in the name, so how you view the world, they are kind of like glasses. You know, you put them on. These are my glasses. I just usually wear contacts, which I'm wearing now. They're like glasses. We look through them, and the longer we look through them, we see things just clearly. And we kind of sometimes, if you wear glasses, you forget that you're wearing them. Maybe a better illustration is contacts, although you can't see them as much. Contacts, you forget that you're wearing them, but you're looking through them, and they shape how you view what you see, your perspectives. That's what a worldview is. We actually don't often think about it. We don't think about the framework we're looking. We just kind of believe the things we believe and feel the things we feel. But we actually, deep down, all of us have a worldview of how we look at the world. And we want to dive into that and take off our glasses a little bit and look at them and examine, hey, how does this understanding of the world from the Bible, how does it shape the questions and conflicts we see around us, how we speak into it? And so that's worldviews. Now, we are not maybe the best at discussing worldviews, and we want to grow more and more, to be quick to listen, slow to speak, to engage with other worldviews in a way that is honoring and respecting. And that starts first with us listening to the story of the Bible, to be quick to listen and to apply it to our lives and how we view the world. So worldview questions. Every worldview answers these questions about God. You know, who or what is God, or he, she, it, God's plural? Is there one? We all have questions about that, or the where the world came from and where it's going and how do we live life. And everyone has those questions. We may consciously think about them, or maybe just subconsciously. Maybe we don't really think directly about those questions, or maybe certain things in life bring those up. But deep down, these are all boiling down around in our minds, in our hearts. So these questions, everyone has different answers to fundamental questions in the world. And there's always a connection between what we believe and how we live our lives. Someone who lives their life for money or family or whatever. We can look at how people live, and deep down, people live the way that they live because of their perspective and values and assumptions about the world. And we want to say that we want to be founded in the Bible. So N.T. Wright, he's a theologian, writer on Christian origins and Jesus and history. And he puts it like this. He says, worldviews are like the foundations of a house. They're vital, but they are invisible. Worldviews are a foundation. They hold up everything, but we don't often see how the pieces fit together, but they are vital. And that's what we want to dive into. So there's kind of maybe 6 key questions I'm just throwing out just to kind of start your thinking about what a worldview is. First one is like, how do we think about the origin of the world? Where did we come from? Where is this world? How did it originate? Was it accident? Was there a creator? Are we creation, origin? Or what about purpose? What is the meaning of our lives, our actions, our steps? Worldviews answer the question about what's wrong. Because when we look at the world, we see this isn't right. There's pieces of it that are really bad, pieces of it that are really great, but what's wrong? And then, we're asking the question, well, what about a solution? What's the answer? What sets things right? What will fix this? And then we're also asking questions about destiny. Where is this world headed? Where are you and me headed? Is it eternal? Is it just temporary and then it's gone? What's the destiny of life? And then questions about morality. How do we live our lives? What steps? What is right and wrong? And in evaluating that. So underneath each of these questions of origin and purpose and what's wrong and the solution and where we're headed and how we live, underneath all of that, we go to an authority, some sort of fundamental belief that we say informs how we answer those questions. It's the authority on that matter. And we as Christians are saying we want that authority to be God and his word. But you could ask anyone, and they're going to appeal to different authorities, different sources. This is what I put my faith in. And we don't always put it in those terms, but actually every authority is something that we are putting our faith in. It is something that is recognized by faith. In other words, there's no neutral perspective where someone can say completely unbiased, this is the absolute authority. No, we debate and talk through presuppositions and what we believe and why. Why do we believe and go to an authority? And so everyone is putting their faith in something, in someone or some evaluation. And for us as Christians, we want to say that is the Bible. Now, why? Well, we believe here at Quest, God and his word is the unchanging truth that shapes in everything we view in the world. And Jesus, he said, this is my word. This is revealing who God is. And we need to live our lives by it. And if that's Jesus's view, and when we read the story of Scripture, we see it's attesting to that, we want to build our framework out from the Bible. Now, the authority there is in God and his word, and we recognize that by faith. Now, other people will appeal to other authorities, and digging into why we believe these things is a great discussion for us for another time. But for today, we just want to say the biblical worldview. Now, before we jump a little bit further on authority, we want to recognize that God has revealed himself specifically in the Bible, but God also generally has revealed himself in the world and his creation. And so there's all sorts of truths that we can go to. But fundamentally, God and his word is what defines how we view the world and how we interpret the data and interpret our lives. And that's one of the things about worldviews. It's how we interpret the world and how we envision ourselves as a part of a story. See, that's the thing. Every worldview presents a story, a narrative. This is the world we live in. Here's why. Here's where it's headed. Here's your part in it. And it could be a very bleak narrative. It could be a very hopeful or optimistic narrative or a mix. But every worldview tells a story, and it shapes everything that we believe. So, for example, the Marxist view of the world would say everything is about power and money and influence, and that is what is driving everything, power. Or it could be any number of ideologies, but underneath it all, it's telling a story of our world and the broken pieces, why, how we got there, and how we should live, and what the answer should be. And so for Christians, when we look at the Bible, it's not just a set of theological facts, it's a story. Beginning to end, it's a narrative. And it's a story it's presented at just tons and tons through stories and stories and stories. It is teaching, it is truth inside of it, but it's a story of the world. But it's not just any story. The Bible presents itself as the story, the universal story. The fancy theological word to impress people is a meta-narrative. This is the story of the whole world. Now, that's actually not a very popular idea in our world, to say you believe in one truth that applies to everyone. But the Bible presents itself as the determining narrative of our world and how we understand it. And there's a lot of different ways you could break the ideas of the Bible apart, but I just want to put it in 4 different kind of pictures, or 4 different acts, 4 different parts. And first, it's the idea that there is creation. The biblical storyline is about creation. There's a creator, and we are creation, that he built this world to be full of his love and goodness and mercy and justice, and human beings have a unique part in that. And we'll talk more about that next week. But God created the world, but there was a rebellion. Human beings turned against God. Human beings said, we're going to do things our own way. And because of that, the Bible word for that is sin, we turned away and we rejected and rebelled. So there's creation and there's rebellion. The amazing thing about the biblical storyline isn't that human beings it's that we're not stuck just to fix it on our own, but it's that God entered the world. And so we'll call it redemption, creation, rebellion, redemption. That God enters into our world, and first it's through promises to Noah and Abraham and these fundamental characters and people and in the world that God entered into and said, I'm going to be with you and I'm going to accomplish my purposes to redeem what is broken and lost. And ultimately we see that not just through the story of Israel, but its culmination in the person of Jesus, that there is redemption. And then lastly, that there's restoration, creation, rebellion, redemption, restoration. The idea is that God is going to restore and remake and renew everything in this world that's broken, that he is passionately committed to it. Creation, rebellion, redemption, and restoration. That's kind of big picture, Genesis to Revelation, the idea of where this is going. And you and me fit into that. And for us, we would say, looking back to Jesus, we've been redeemed and we're awaiting the restoration, but it's beginning here and now. So that worldview, or the worldview of the Bible, is shaped by this story. And that's how we answer the key questions of life, of going to the Bible and how it fits in the story of Scripture. And it's this worldview. Now, as followers of Jesus, we want to be really committed to understanding this idea. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but bank tellers or people who study money, in order to understand a counterfeit, they spend a lot of time looking at real money, just authentic dollar bills, studying them, every angle, knowing the details. And they spend so much time looking at the original bills, authentic bills, that then they can understand or immediately recognize a fraudulent, a fake bill. And so they don't actually become experts in understanding fake money or fraudulent bills by looking at fake bills. They understand, first and foremost, the true, authentic money. And as Christians, we want to not just spend our time looking at other worldviews or ideas of the world, but we want to be spending so much time looking at God and His Word that we can immediately see how this fits in our world and what shapes the way we think and talk, and it shapes how we interact with other ideas, respectfully and graciously, but we want to come at this from a Christian perspective with how we answer the question. So it's a theological framework, right? It's a worldview. It's a way of looking at the world. It's coherent. And this week, with this in mind, worldviews and authorities and recognizing God and His Word, that's going to shape the next 5 weeks that we're doing the Issachar Project. The next 5 weeks, we're going to unpack key ideas from creation to rebellion, to God's judgment on that, to the redemption that's in Jesus, to the restoration that is coming. We're going to unpack these ideas over the next few weeks because they are foundational to how we interact to any present day questions or issues that Kevin was speaking about in previous weeks. To think through them deeply, we have to have an understanding of how this fits for us, for a worldview, and for how the Bible presents these elements. So we're going to spend the next few weeks unpacking that idea, and understanding creation is next time. So we really hope you'll tune in to talk about this idea of God creating the world and what that means for you, for me, for our lives, for the world that we live in. And I'm really, really excited. We hope you'll tune in. Now, before we go, I want to also highlight there's a video, a link that is below, to a guy named Paul Anderson. He is a professor at RTS, Reformed Theological Seminary, and it's a YouTube video of a presentation he did a couple years ago on worldviews. It's like 20 minutes, and it's a better summary than I'm able to give, but it just kind of unpacks the key ideas of what a worldview is, why it matters, and how we think it through. And I would encourage you, if you want to dive deeper into what a worldview is and maybe start reflecting more and more on your own way of viewing the world, I want you to check that out. It's not super long. I think it's really good and worth your time. So come back next week. I think actually it'll be in 2 weeks, where we'll be talking about creation and this idea of the biblical worldview and the fundamental piece of creation. And we're really, really excited and hope you will join us. And stay tuned, stay connected. We love you, Quest. Have a great week. See ya.